Hello and welcome to the newest episode of Gut Spiller. This is a podcast where I speak to my mates in music and we try and go a bit deeper than your average music interview, hence the name Gut Spiller. And today I'm with Nina from Lowen. Do you want to introduce yourself a little?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm Nina Saidi from Lowen. I sing, I play a few musical instruments, but mostly I'm the vocalist of Lowen.
Yeah, and the tables have turned here because I guess the last time we were hanging out in person, you were interviewing me on your podcast, Serpent's Temple, right?
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. It was a really crazy day. Really enjoyed the format of your podcast, which is where you kind of, it's not tarot card, is it? It's like a similar kind of deck of cards and people pick a card and then we kind of talk about what it means to them and things like that.
Yeah, that's right. They're psi cards. They're based on the Jungian archetypes. That was a really fun day because I guested with you as well.
Yeah, at Damnation, Nina came on stage, did her amazing vocals, and I think for a lot of people that was the highlight of our set when you got up. But yeah, we performed on stage together, did the interview, and I definitely wanted to have you on Gut Spiller at the earliest opportunity. So, we always like to start off with kind of a funny story or an interesting story. Have you got anything for us from what's been happening with Lowen lately?
I don't know how interesting or funny it is, but the first thing I thought of was last year it was the hottest day of the year. So naturally we decided to do a music video on that day. We trekked to the White Cliffs of Dover, about a 2-hour walk from the car park, and we were with one of our good friends from Vermont, Dinko, and we had to cart a huge crash mat onto the beach, which was covered in rocks. And for the music video, he basically judo flips me over his head. So I fly in a somersault into the air and land on a crash mat. And we had to do this about 10, 11 times to get some takes for this video. And I'm wearing I wear huge dresses on stage. So I'm wearing this gigantic, really ornate dress, and there's just people walking their dogs on the beach at the same time, and there's just a bunch of metalheads, and Dinko's topless, and he's got a rippling six-pack, and he's just covered in smears of black ink and dirt, and we're angrily fake fighting each other, and he's throwing me around. So that was quite surreal. It was a good day. It was quite fun. I don't know if that fits the criteria.
So that's for the new album, right?
It is, yeah. That's a preview. For anyone, the music video won't actually be out until sort of August, September, so that's a little sneak preview that you've got of the content of the video there.
Yeah, I think that little story sums you up well, because I don't know, when I think Alone, I just think of just going all out at every opportunity, which is really cool. I mean, obviously we had you on at Do Minds, and you blew everyone away, and then the new single you've released recently again blew me away. It's just such a breath of fresh air, so I'm sure you're going to get a lot of attention when the album and the video, by the sounds of it, drop. Do you want to talk a bit about the concept behind the band, because you do traditional Iranian vocals, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's often referred to as tahrir. So the most Western way I can refer to it is kind of yodeling, where you're basically using your vocal break to create these sounds, and you use your voice in a almost rhythmic way. A lot of people associate that with Dead Can Dance and Gladiator and Dune soundtracks and things like that. But to me, it's my way of connecting with my heritage, because I was born in the UK, but I was born in exile, so I've never been able to go to Iran. And I have a lot of family over there that I've never been able to see, or who I've only been able to see on 1 or 2 occasions in sort of third countries. I won't probably never be able to go to Iran. I risk execution if I go. Women are not permitted to sing unaccompanied there. You also, heavy metal's illegal. You have to play underground shows and risk execution. You can't be gay. There's a lot of stuff that isn't great, and that's only because of the Islamic regime. It's not because of Iranian culture. And at the moment there is a huge movement, often referred to now as the Women Life Freedom Movement, where women and men accompanying them are campaigning to change this, and to have another revolution and to take back their freedom, basically. And that is a huge part of why Lowen exists. It's why I make music. Not only is it a way for me to connect with my heritage and my culture, it's also my very small and insignificant way of standing up for other women, for other people who haven't had that freedom. So what we do is inherently quite political, even though I'm not necessarily singing about politics, but I use fantasy and science fiction and high metaphor to sort of communicate that feeling of being lost, of not fitting in anywhere, of being between worlds, of liminality, which I think pretty much every metalhead can probably relate to on some level. And I think that's what makes our music, if that makes sense, because I love to connect with people when we play and share that. And I think that is part of our live show, is that connection that we form by sharing in this sort of third world. Is a little bit of a pun. I don't mean it in terms of third world country. I mean in terms of like another world that we can all inhabit together. That is where you can explore these feelings without the trappings of modern context and politics and what's happening now. And it's always relevant. It's always relevant, but then you can also escape from how draining it is to be existing in 2024.
Wow, that's really cool, because the last guest, who I get his episode, I guess, will be coming out before yours, was do you know David Burke from down in Southampton? And so he's writing a PhD on heavy metal, and his kind of whole thesis at the moment is about how metal is losing its meaning in modern times, because it no longer really represents rebellion in a world where it's hard to rebel, because everything's been done. Kind of everyone's used to extreme sounds and extreme imagery, and so metal's kind of losing its place and its meaning in society. But what I think when you tell me that story, and I think about metal being illegal in certain parts of the world, it kind of it's got an edge there. It's got a meaning, because maybe in Western society, you know, everything's been challenged and we're a post-meaning society. But in that context of Iran or whatever, where it would be illegal and you can be sentenced to death, I guess it couldn't be more shocking and extreme.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm very privileged that I can make metal and that I can make this music here. If I was born in Iran, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. I know people, Cheyenne from Trivax, who came from Iran to make music, and he does that now. But you know, when I started this band, I knew that that was another door that had shut, because there always was a chance where maybe, you know, through some luck, I'd be able to get a visa, I'd be able to potentially go back, you know, if I got married and changed my name. There's all these ways in, but now I've done this, I just know that if I go, I'm going to get stopped at the airport, you know. And there are people who, there have been people who've come at me and who've sort of said, no, this isn't true. But I mean, just read the news. You know, there are women being brutally executed. They're literally gassing schoolgirls that are 11, 12 years old just because they're trying to get an education. And this is, you know, this is not a risk that me as a woman I'm not gonna take that risk and go there and have that done to me. And there are people, I've had legal advice where that's been confirmed. It's one of those things where I think it's really easy if you live in the West to just think that it's the same everywhere else. But there absolutely are. That it's more than just Iran. It's not about me. It's not about a specific country. There's always going to be places where you can be transgressive in that way. And I'm lucky enough that I can sort of tap into it from a distance, and I can explore my position as a first generation immigrant, or second generation, I guess, immigrant, and I can feel that, because I think something I experienced growing up here was a lot of shame about where I came from, especially because when 9/11 happened, I was at school. So pretty much overnight, being Middle Eastern was like terrible. You tried not to mention it. I was always trying to blend in. I remember I bought a Playboy purse when I was like 11 because I thought that would make me like somehow not weird to the people at school. You know, I was taking like hummus with my packed lunch and gherkins and olives, you know, way before it became a middle class food. Yeah, and that was, you know, I remember people would like point at my food and be like, oh, what's that, you know. And
You were ahead of the curve.
Huh?
You were just ahead of the curve by about 15 years.
Mate, I was a trendsetter and no one knew it. But yeah, like I experienced a lot of shame, and I didn't want anyone to know that I was Iranian. To the point where like I wouldn't speak it outside. If my parents were speaking Farsi to me, if we were out at the shops or on the street, I'd be like, no, don't talk. For I don't want people to know I'm not English. But I never was treated like I was English. You know, I literally have memories of racism when I was in primary school and infant school, from teachers, from adults, stuff like that. So I never really, I always knew I didn't belong. And I know I would never belong in Iran as well. So there's this huge tension there. And the band, in my 20s, I started to reconnect with, you know, part of me that I can never change. I can't just put down being Iranian or not looking like I fit in the country I was born in. So yeah, this is a long way of saying that. Yeah.
You know, so when you're performing on stage, is this at the forefront of your mind, or is it felt like physically? Because when I'm performing, I don't have anything like that. I have something, just emotions from other things in my life. But, you know, when you're performing in Lowen, are you thinking about these things, or are you just lost in the music, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it really depends on the performance, and it depends on where I'm stepping into it from. When we did Unceasing Lamentations, that was fully, the two tracks, the main two tracks are fully improvised. So when we were doing that, I was completely tapping into a place of like utter pain and devastation, and you can probably hear that. When we perform live, where I'm like channeling lyrics and things like that, each song to me is kind of like I'm stepping into a movie, and oftentimes I'm almost like, it's almost like synesthesia, where I will see things playing out in front of me, and I'm reacting to that emotionally, sometimes for the first time, sometimes different ways depending on the energy in the room. Other times, you know, I think we've all had it. There are just times where you're not really feeling it. You're just sort of thinking about, oh God, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. You know, have I done the wash? Like, I've got to do this thing after we get off stage. I'm looking at someone like, that's a really cool shirt. Like, I'm just completely having ADHD moments. But that's usually for a few seconds, and you go back into where you are. But most of the time, I think it's quite common. The minute I step on stage, I'm just not myself. I'm something else, and you're channeling some other thing. But I think the stuff you do around that is what results in whatever you step into. So I do a lot of sort of research into like history, into mysticism, into a lot of different things. And I think all of that comes together when I come on stage to make me seem the way that I am, if that makes sense.
Right. That's interesting. And yeah, you have the clothes as well, right? And then you have special instruments as well. And I think it's quite obvious to someone watching that this is more than just a metal band. But I guess that helps you maybe get into the zone.
Yeah, definitely. The instruments, like for example, I have this thing called a santur, which is a hammered dulcimer. That was smuggled out of Iran for me. So that was, I remember picking it up from the airport, and it's so precious an instrument. We took it to the studio, and it's amazing. It has like 56 strings. It takes a lot to tune, so I have to take it to someone to tune it for me. those instruments are very special to me. A lot of them are handmade or handmade custom, thanks to members of my family, or I had to like order in from the Middle East, sometimes from Turkey. It's a really good place to get like percussion instruments. So yeah, the instruments, I get really emotional about them. I get really connected to them because they're like another point of connection for me. The clothes as well, like I don't want to wear normal clothes when I have quite loud fashion sense sometimes. I like to wear lots of different kinds of clothes, but for Lowen, I tend to be quite particular. I wear a lot of sort of anarkali, which is a kind of dress. It's a particular cut. It's named after a courtier that was like a favourite courtesan of an old king. And she basically fell in love with someone else. He got sad and he walled her up while she was still alive. But that was her favoured clothing in court. And I think there's something really stately about it. And I like that it's not... I don't want to like... I want to be as unsexy as possible, if that makes sense. So I don't want to sexualize myself on stage. Sometimes I'll wear like tight bras so that my chest is flatter. And I try not to emphasize parts of my body because I want people to focus on my voice and not on not on the shape of my body, if that makes sense. Because I want to do this for a long time, and I don't want to be seen as hot, because that's not going to last very long if you even consider me that. I think for me, and I think I learned this from a stand-up comedian, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg, and she was saying that when she wore low-cut tops, no one laughed at her jokes, and that really resonated with me. I was like, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want to... And I think there are some people where that really works, like they're fucking beautiful and it lends to their art, but for me, I just kind of... I don't want to feel like I'm a hostage to the transience of my body, if that makes sense.
There are a lot of bands in our scene that do have, female members, and they attract a certain type of fan, and I guess that affects your journey as a band. I guess. I don't know, because I'm not one myself, but that's... Yeah, maybe you're even limiting or how fast you'll grow your fan base, because I think that is an easy way, to sell your image in that way. It's an easy way to grow as a band really fast, but I dare say you're really doing the right thing there, because people will come to your band for the music and not for aesthetic reasons, I guess.
I think some bands do a really good job of embodying the aesthetic vibe of like a sexy fucking goddess, and they're really good at that. And they also have amazing voices, and they're really talented too. I think different bands... I think there's a space for everyone. There's a place for every kind of music, and maybe this is my unpopular opinion. Like, I think that there is... Sometimes I'll see a band and I'll have like a visceral reaction. I'll be like, I wouldn't have done that like that. And then I always say to myself, there's space for everyone, because the more diversity you have in music, that means that the scene is doing well. That means that there are fans and that there are people supporting these bands. So if you think you're better than that, or if you think what you're doing is more valid, then go and do that thing, because the people are there that are going to listen to your music. I think that's a really good sign. And I think that, like, I mean, I thirst over like beautiful people in music all the time, and I'm glad that they're there. I don't want everyone to be like all covered up like me. That's me. That's my own journey. Like, I don't think that there's one way to do things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting hearing you speak. I've never spoke to you about the band in this much depth, really. It seems that you put a lot of thought into it. I put a lot of thought into what we do as well, but sometimes it gets a bit much, and I'm like, I wish I could just feel it a bit more. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm very conscious that I don't want to overthink it and overburden it with all this like intellectual stuff. Do you ever feel like that? Like, there's like a balance between thinking about it and then actually doing it, just like the whole rock and roll aspect of it, and just like playing balls to the wall kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely an overthinker. I think there's always one person in a band that's the like really intense, over intellectualizing thinker. And that's often the driving force behind the band as well. And I think that's been me since the inception of Lowen. So yeah, I'm definitely the neurotic one. But I do try and sort of put myself back in my place. And thankfully, Shem, our guitarist and my partner, is a really great counterpoint to me being really intense. Anyone who's met him, as you did earlier, will see that he's got this like fantastic chaotic energy. And we're a really good counterpoint to each other. I think we balance each other really well in that regard. There'll be times where I'm trying to make a decision about something and I'll just be picking at it for days, and then I'll just have a conversation with him and he'll be like, yeah, just do this thing, and I'll be like, okay, I'll just do the thing. And there are times where I think creativity, a big part of it is being playful, of getting out of your head. I think to be in a band you have to have the deep thinking mind to do the business decisions, to do the management, and because we're playing the most unprofitable genre imaginable, we have to do that as well as be creative. So it's this huge juggling act a lot of the time.
Do you enjoy that side, or do you hate it like I do, like the whole business?
I actually love it. I love the business side. I don't know why. I'm kind of a bit of a nerd about the business side. So I literally have like books, and I go and watch lectures. I'm really boring. I'm really sorry. I'm so boring. I love reading about like licensing deals. I was doing that this morning. Learning about different roles that people have in the industry. I'm fascinated by, when we went on tour with Green Lung, which was amazing. I was talking to their team. I was like, what do you do? Like, what's your interaction with this? Like, how does the billing work? Like, how do you interact with these people over here? Like, the way that everything interacts with each other is so fascinating. It is really a huge machine, and there are all these gears interacting with each other. And once you understand those things, it becomes a lot easier to navigate it. And I think that a lot of bands would benefit from doing that. But understandably, it's not interesting to most people, and it's probably quite daunting. And there's definitely the ladder, it really is a ladder, and you've got to climb it, and it's not simple. You don't just keep going up one rung at a time, and it can be, I think, mentally and psychologically for a lot of people that's really difficult, and I think it can feel like failure, but that's part of the game, is failing and getting back up and just doing it again and again. I treat it like a game in a way, you know. It's just, it's so funny that we're here doing music and playing these shows, and there are people that like our music enough to come and watch us do music. It's all so absurd in the most beautiful way that even though I think about it in a quite obsessive and neurotic manner, I still have this level of absurdism that hangs over it, where I can step back and sort of laugh at myself. And I think that's quite important, is to be able to not take yourself seriously as well.
Yeah, we always say take the music seriously, but don't really take anything else about it seriously. That seems to be what works for us. So, yeah, the tour with Green Lung, I think you were saying to me, that's really your first tour for Lowen, right? How was it?
Yeah, it was amazing. I felt it didn't feel real, and it still doesn't. I'm kind of still processing everything. We got to go on a tour bus. We got to share a tour bus with Green Lung, which was amazing. The Green Lung folks are just so good. They're really good people. I cannot emphasize how much they went out of their way to make sure that we were okay and that we could afford to go on tour with them. And everything was basically sold out. All the people were really nice. Their team is amazing. Their tour manager, their driver, Metal Joe, everyone's just so good. I was really blown away by how positive everything was, and every second was just a pleasure. They're so funny. They're the funniest people ever. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of hanging out with them, but oh my god, I love them to bits. It was. I felt like I was in Kerrang. I know it sounds silly, but you know when you're a kid and you read a magazine and you have this sort of image of what being a musician is like. I basically got to do that. And I don't really care what happens now. I got to do the thing. I got to be on a tour bus and find out what it's like to try and sleep on a moving tour bus.
Yeah, I mean, you've gone straight in. You've kind of skipped a whole shitty portion of touring somehow. You've gone straight in at the executive level.
Yeah.
Which really is because of the work you've done on the band and the music and how good that is, I guess. You wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise.
I mean, we still might do the shitty level at some point. We'll probably have to do a poopy van tour at some point next year. Who knows? But yeah, we were so lucky and incredibly spoiled. I think this was... It's not normal to just get to go and do that as your first tour. I don't think we're going to get to do that for our second tour unless we're really, really lucky. But yeah, it was just surreal. Really, really surreal.
So would you say that's the high point so far for the band?
Yeah, I would say that. I think nothing... I wasn't expecting to be asked to go on tour. I was going to my shitty day job, and I got the email, and I remember, like, you know when you open an email and you just go... You just kind of, like, your breath catches in your throat, and that happens about once a year. That happened, and my hand was, like, shaking, and I called Shem, and I was like, you know, this just happened. And yeah, it was a real honor to be asked, to be chosen to go on the tour. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have a low point?
I have a low point for sure. I have a few. I think we all do. I mean, I've obviously, as pretty much any musician can attest to, we've all had mental health moments. We've all had periods of, like, extreme depression when it comes to making music. There was a period for me, I think you can hear it in some of the music, where I'm just really, really sad. I was still trying to find my voice in the band, and as a musician I was full of doubt. I wasn't sure if I was making the right choices. I'm glad I stuck with it, because I did, and I think a part of it was just sort of refusing to lie down and stop. The less sort of heavy low point, I'd say, probably when we were recording this album, which was a really great experience. It was January, and we were staying in this Airbnb, and the window wasn't closed for about 5 days in the dead of winter, and I had no idea. It was just really cold and really miserable, and I was like, am I going to be able to do the vocals for this album, because I feel like shit, because we were just freezing to death in this Airbnb. I had to go to a TK Maxx and buy loads of jumpers. So that's probably the sort of, I don't know, easy to digest low point of my career.
But the first low point you were talking about, so were you feeling down because of other things outside the band, or because of the band, the process?
It's a mixture of things. It was a bit of both, honestly. When it took a while for me to be able to speak up for myself. It took a while for me to feel like I was being heard, and that I could insert my own identity into the music. Like, that's not so present in the first album. And it's very much present in the new album, and I think the two will be a very stark contrast. You can already hear it in the single that we've released recently, and I'm a lot happier now. But yeah, back then I was still really trying to fight to be heard, and I think that's really common probably for people. I mean, I'm very introverted, I'm a woman working with men, it's not easy, and then on top of that, like, culturally I'm very different in some ways. I'm not, like, fully English, I'm not fully Iranian, but there are parts of me that find it difficult to communicate in a Western way at times, if that makes sense. Yeah, I can be quite indirect, and I'm learning to be more direct, but when you're a woman trying to be direct, that doesn't always work either. So it's very difficult to learn how to talk to people in a way that's good communication, and that often means, to a degree, sacrificing. When I see guys communicate, they can just turn around and be like, that's shit, or they can just say something really direct, whereas I can't necessarily do that. I can't say that and it mean the same thing, which is kind of annoying when you're around men doing that to each other all the time. And that's not me calling anyone out. It's just kind of like learning that sometimes copying people isn't the best way to do stuff, because that's kind of what I thought you're supposed to do. As someone who's probably a little bit autistic, I observe people and I'm like, okay, that person's doing that and that's working, so let me try that. And I did that enough times where I worked out, actually I need to be a bit different because I'm different.
Yeah, you can hear it for sure, because going back to when I did book you guys for Doomlines, and you know, I guess that was our first ever interaction. It was just me messaging you saying, I like what you've got up on your Bandcamp, do you want to play this show? And I did. I thought it was good music and I thought it was interesting. But then when I saw you play, it was so different from the stuff I'd heard online. Because the stuff online, it was a bit murky and kind of very doomy and dirgy.
Yeah.
But then when you're on the stage, it was just like this ray of like piercing light, like your vocals. And so it shocked me, actually. So I can totally see the difference and the progression. And that's really interesting that you say it kind of comes with the flow of your struggle to be happy and express yourself within the band, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely been a struggle, I would say that. It's not easy. I think no one should take being a musician lightly if they're choosing to go on the path. I mean, definitely do it, but also it sucks at the same time. And it's sort of a pain that you need to consistently choose to take on. Like, there's always going to be points where you look at where you are in life and you're like, okay, if I'm going to go on tour, I can't go on holiday for the next 2 to 3 years, probably. And that's a choice that we made, and it was worth it. But I also really do need a holiday. And I'm trying to work out how to do that without losing my mind, because, you know, we have to work really hard to be able to afford to just make an album, for example. And then once we release the album, we probably have to do another tour, and we have to probably do more things and think about fronting the cost for the next album, because we paid for everything ourselves. So, you know, we paid for the cost of the studio, we paid for the tour, we paid to make the merch to go on tour. We were basically DIY up until sort of February, until we signed with Church Road. And, you know, I don't know how much you're allowed to say about record contracts. I'm very new to being with a record label, and they're fantastic. Church Road and Laybear Recordings, really, really good labels, really supportive. But the support they provide is with manufacturing. It's not like maybe 10, 20 years ago where they would give you money to go on tour and do these things. And even then, that money is lent to you. It's never free money. So you kind of have to pay it back. So it's really not... it's not financially easy to be a musician, and that definitely lends to the psychological difficulty of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just watching you guys over the last year or so, I do feel like you've perhaps got a shot at making that transition, maybe to where this could be your like full-time thing. That's just my personal opinion. Do you want that one day?
That's a really cool thing to hear. I've actually never considered it. I never thought we could do that. I mean, yeah, that's the dream, isn't it? But it's a very scary one, because if I did transition to being a musician full time, what do you go back to if that goes away? Because it can very easily, unless you become like a pop icon, which I highly doubt is going to happen to us. You never know. But I think that would be very difficult. I mean, my dream, because I'm kind of weirdly obsessed with the music industry, I would love to have some kind of involvement in that. And that's always been, I mean, when I was 16, I started doing music journalism so I could talk to bands. I never thought I was going to be a musician. That was like, I thought the closest I'd get to being in a metal band was to talk to metal bands and be around them. And I'd love to maybe work in like A&R or something, because I think that's probably my dream job if I wasn't a musician. So if I could do both, that would be really nice.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you say, isn't it everyone's dream? It's probably not my dream personally, just because of friends who I've spoken to, and I definitely want to get these friends that I'm thinking of in my head on the podcast to talk about these exact things. But I know people who are trying to make that work, and I look at them as a fan, as probably all other fans do, and think they're making like a decent amount of money. Um, and then I always think now, from having these conversations with my friends, that basically the people that I think are doing well are only just surviving.
Yeah.
That seems
Yeah.
to be my experience. And it's like you say, so if you're going to put all your eggs in this one basket of, right, I'm a musician now and I'm going to try and make this work, and I'm only just going to manage, what happens when your band inevitably splits up and the prime of your life has been spent on something that hasn't got a massive amount of transferable skills? So I think while it probably is worth it, us as a band, when just Kurakuma, when we looked around at who we are and what we want to do with our lives, we kind of decided to keep it DIY. Not that I don't think we've got the appeal that your band has. So I think we'd find it even harder. But yeah, I think it's something that should definitely be considered. I know people who do want to make it at any cost, but I haven't got experience of trying to make it work. Just talking to friends, it seems like it's practically impossible. There's like 1% of bands that can. I mean, it's interesting that you want to do it. It would be interesting to see you try and go and do that. But
That's really interesting because you did a really good video. You did a tour breakdown for when Kurokuma went on tour, and that's like a really good video, I think, to kind of show how expensive it is to be an artist. I actually had this conversation with a family friend today, because I think probably everyone who's in a band gets this, where like they go and do something, like a tour, and they're like, their family friends are like, or their uncles or the Christmas table, they're like, oh, you've come down from your room, did you make loads of money when you were on tour, and I kind of had to explain to them like what a booking agent is and what a percentage they take, and then merch cuts, and then tour managers and merch managers and PR and market, all these things that you sink money into. You don't really make money, and I think the bigger you get, the bigger your team gets. So then you just keep giving away percentages of your music, and it's not like you're not keeping. Even though I put a lot of money in, and most of it's my money or me and Shem's money, we're still giving away parts of the music to other people. Like people who we give some like mechanical rights to, or licensing, things like that. There's always little slices of cake being taken off all the blood, sweat and tears you're putting into a project. It's not, to me, being a full-time musician would be not just making money from touring or merch. It would be making money from like sync deals. So like from movies, from TV, getting something which is like giving you like a steady stream of royalties. And that would only happen if we got picked up by like a huge movie. Like the Dune soundtrack, for example, will probably give you like residuals for a few years. But even then, like now, it's not the same as it was in like 1980, where you got a huge royalty cut compared to now, because we just live in a digital age where intellectual property just isn't as important anymore, which is a really interesting topic. And I hope it changes. I don't really know what's going to happen, but I don't see it getting better for artists unless there's a huge change in cultural.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't know. I feel like you've had quite a fast ascent over the past year, just in terms of what people think about you, and I think you've got the potential, and that's cool. I think that the most sensible time to do it is, like yourself, if you want to be in music. I think if you don't want to be in music, like I say, it's the thinking of it in a very kind of career-minded way, it's that transferable skills thing to me. It's like you're kind of left with nothing if you want to go to another career. But if you want to be in the industry, then yeah, it sounds like you're approaching it all in the right way. So let's see what happens to Lowen over the next few years. Your album's coming out, is it October?
Yeah, October 4th. It's called Do Not Go to War with the Demons of Mazandaran.
It's unique. I've not heard anything quite like it, really, which is very rare to say these days in metal. It's... Well, obviously you've got the Middle Eastern influences on the vocals and the instrumentation, but the way that you change up the tempos and the rhythms, it's like a production. It's just, I don't know, I think that's the best way to describe it. It's it doesn't feel like a song, and don't take that the wrong way. It feels like a show. It's almost like a musical number or something.
Hell yeah.
It's just colourful. It's like I'm listening to it, I can see colours. Also, the artwork is very colourful.
It is. I love the artwork. It's by Hervé Scott Flamand, who's I hope I pronounced his name right. He's a French artist, oil painter, also in a punk band called Ici Paris, which is so cool. He's so fucking cool. I want to go hang out with him. If we have the money to get on the Eurostar at some point. But yeah, like I feel really blessed that we've been able to work with him through all of our releases. So his art is on all our covers. And yeah, I mean, I love musicals. I love Phantom of the Opera. We and us and Green Lung, we spent a large portion of the tour singing musical numbers. So that's nice to hear that other people are hearing that in our work as well. We're huge fans, and I think you know, Phantom of the Opera is like one of the best musicals ever written. I'm not really an Andrew Lloyd Webber head, but I do like Phantom. I think it's just such a theatrical and dark and heavy musical, and like the organ is just sick, and it really like ties in with my 70s sensibilities, appreciation of prog and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up, the only music, well, I grew up because I was in a religious household. I grew up with Jesus Christ Superstar and Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat. But Jesus Christ Superstar, especially, it does have that like 70s, it's that 70s rock opera thing, and it's cool. It's got some really cool riffs and like the guitar tones on it, because it's obviously been produced by this $1 million production team. It's like hearing really good rock music, a lot of it.
Yeah, I think because the performance is tied into the music, I think that makes it. I think when I think about writing, I think about it in a really visual way. I'm like thinking like I'm watching a film almost when I hear, and when I'm writing as well, I think about the structure too, and I think that's really important. Is when we started out, it was really organic and it was really big, and I'm quite picky, and I'm against, in our music, I'm against repetition unless it's incredibly intentional. And I think there are times where it really works in a lot of music. Like I love expansive doom, I love repetition in other bands, but for us, especially if we're performing it, I want everything to be like very thought out. Everything is measured. Every repetition on the album has been scrutinized by me, and sometimes fought over, because there were sections that were very big. I mean, there is a very huge repetitious section on the album, which you won't hear until October, but it's probably one of my favorite riffs I've ever heard. So there you go.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's not repetitious at all. I wouldn't even call that track doom. Just trying to think of it now. I mean, it's not even. It's mostly probably death metal, if it's anything. You know, it's in the vague area in my head as something like Nile, but far more melodic, and yeah, just like I say, like a musical, like a melodic musical version of Nile.
I'm imagining Carl Sanders in like a Technicolor Dreamcoat right now. Just like swirling around on stage. That's great.
But seriously, if you haven't heard it, anyone go and check it out. It's great. We've kind of touched on this, I guess, a bit, but is there like an ideal that you have? Because you've spoken about you said it's almost an act of defiance what you're doing. What would you say is the kind of ideal that you hold when you're doing all this?
When I started the band, me and Shem, we met in the front row of an Akakoka concert, and since I can remember, I just wanted to hear this music. I wanted to hear really heavy Middle Eastern music, and that's kind of what I said to him. I want to be in a doom band, and I was originally going to play bass. I didn't think I was a vocalist at all. I've never really done vocals, but yeah, it was a complete accident that I became a vocalist. Really? I know. And that's where it started. I just remember like thinking with longing about how much I wanted to hear that I could hear it, like even before the band, years before the band was conceived, I could hear it in my head, and it's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. Because a lot of the time with a female vocal or with any Middle Eastern vocal, it's not put over the heaviness of the music. The music's heavy, and then it stops being heavy, and then it's like, let's put the frail, vulnerable vocal in here, and then it's heavy again. And it's not always like that, and sometimes it works. But I wanted to hear it the other way around. I wanted to hear, because I think there is nothing scarier than an angry woman, and there's nothing heavier than the pain that women have gone through. And I think that's a really great part of the human psyche to explore, and I don't think it's been explored enough. So yeah, I thought I want to hear that, and I'm really happy that I get to be exploring that with the people I get to explore it with Shem and our drummer Cal Constantine. I think we're really lucky to be on this journey, and I feel like we've been so lucky so far. I'm just really excited to release the album and see what happens with it.
Yeah, you've got quite a long span of time between the single release and the album release. That's what, May to October, that's 5 months. Was that like Church Road's idea? Or was that...
No, so there's 2 more singles coming.
But yeah, still, I think it's quite like a big lead up. I'm just like we're only doing 3 months and you're doing 5, so I just wondered if there was a reason why you went for 5.
Yeah, so there is. I wanted to do a Waterfall release. So yeah, I did want to... The part of it as well is that we released that single before we went on tour with Green Lung, because I wanted people to hear our new music before they stepped into the venue to see us. Because like your experience at Doomlines, I didn't want people to think that we were still at our first album in terms of how we sounded. So to me, it was really important that they heard at least one track from the album. And I think Najang Bodhibhaya Mazandaran is like a really good example. Our next single is coming out in about a month. And it's very different. It's very traditional Doom, but it's the only traditional Doom song on the whole album. And that comes with a music video as well. And we actually just spent the last 2 days filming that video, which is why I'm a little bit tired today, because it involved me lying down in a paddling pool filled with black liquid bath bombs and like dribbling black paint out of my mouth, and I put in these huge contact lenses. They're 22 milliliter sclera lenses, so they're really painful to put in. Yeah, my right eye swelled up so big I could barely open it yesterday morning because I had them in all day, and I was just sort of dribbling black paint all over myself, and it's quite a scary music video.
Yeah, I saw those photos on Instagram, and I did wonder what it was for. I don't know. You do lead a very colourful life, though. Like I can't keep track of everything you're doing. Like you were saying for your day job at the moment, you make jewelry, right?
Yeah, I've been doing that for a few years. I do commissions for people's. I've done like pendants for people's bands. I work with like really big gemstones, and I can't do like little boring things. I'm really bad at it, but I've got like a skull collection. I've made some stuff with like for Warhammer related things. Yeah, I make big experimental chunky jewelry. So if you like that, check it out.
Cool. All right. Well, we're nearly at the hour point. I'm just wondering, is there anything you want to plug. Do you want to talk about your podcast?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the Serpent Temple podcast is great. It involves me doing psych card readings for people, including you, which was a really fun episode. We're hoping to do some more this summer at like Arctangent and a few festivals. The Seed That Dreamed of Its Own Creation is the title of the next single, so that's coming out in July, with a video. And we've got Do Not Go to All of the Demons of Mazandaran coming out in October as well.
Yeah, amazing. All right, yeah, I think that's been a really interesting chat. Yeah, really glad I asked you, and just gonna keep watching with excitement as Lowen keep revealing more and more of this new album especially. So yeah, thanks for talking to us, and I'll get this edited up and it'll be out soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed that, you'll be pleased to know I've got loads more episodes planned with guests from the UK and more further afield. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned for those episodes. Peace.